Professor de Mattei, thank you so much for joining us today for a quick interview. The reason that the Remnant came to Rome during this abuse crisis summit was because of your organization, and your friends, your allies, who set up sort of a demonstration, a Catholic demonstration, right 2 days before the beginning of the summit. Can you tell me why, what motivated you to decide to take this extraordinary action before the summit?
Because this meeting in Rome, I mean the meeting of the 113 conference, bishops' conference presidents, it is really an historical event. But unfortunately there is the danger, and now we are during this meeting, and the danger is very, very real, that nothing really concrete will come from this event. And so our idea it is to attract the attention of all the world about the real issues. And one central point it is that the main problem is not pedophilia, but it is homosexuality. Homosexuality, which is not only a vice usually diffused within the church, but homosexuality it is also a structure of power. It is a network. It is an atmosphere within the church. And a meeting like this, of these days, ignoring the problem of homosexuality, it is really a failure.
Mm-hmm. I just came just moments before I met you today from the Vatican press briefing. Cardinal O'Malley, Cardinal Supich were on hand, and Diane Montagna from LifeSite News actually was given the microphone and allowed to ask a question, and she asked about what you're speaking of now, about the homosexual problem in the priesthood. And it seemed like the cardinals and the bishops at the press conference were nervous by that question, and they seemed to cut it short, almost as if they do not want to talk about that at all, that question of homosexuality. Do you think that's because they're afraid of the accusation of homophobia, or is there something more to their refusal to speak about that?
Yes, I think that one of the main reasons for this silence it is that they are afraid to have a shock, a confrontation with the world, because this is the real problem, a problem which comes since the Second Vatican Council, the new relationship between the Church and the world. Today, Pope Francis and the pastors of the Church speak very much about the credibility of the Church. But what means this word? Because we have to, as Catholic, we have to be credible face vis-à-vis to the gospel, to the teaching of the church with our personal life, and we have to be coherent with the doctrine of the church. This is credibility. But it seems that we have to be credible towards the media, towards the political or mediatic authorities of the world. This is, in my view, the real problem. For this reason, pedophilia is considered as a crime, because of course all the in the laws of the contemporary of the modern states, pedophilia is punished, is considered a crime. On the contrary, homosexuality is not considered a crime, but it is promoted. What it is considered a crime is homophobia, and so also for the church, or better for the men who guide the church in this moment, the only crime is pedophily, because pedophily is recognized as a crime by the modern state, and not homosexuality, because homosexuality is quite a virtue for the secularized modern state. But this is not the law of the gospel, this is the law of the world.
That's interesting, because throughout the summit meeting so far here in Rome, I don't think I've heard any cardinal or bishop or priest who's helping to organize this meeting say anything about being contrite or being sorry for priests having offended God, for offending God's law. They talk about the secular state and the secular laws and the abuse victims, but there's no sense of contrition to the fact that the mystical body of Christ now.
Exactly. I think exactly, you are very right. And the reason it is that the philosophy today within the Church is the philosophy of the French Revolution. We can remember that the fourth article of the Declaration of the Rights of the French Revolution, 1789, says that you are free for doing all except what it is damned for the other. Mm-hmm. I mean that there is absolutely no reference to a supreme, objective and absolute law, a divine law. And today it seems that, for example, pedophily is considered a crime not because it represents a violation of the natural and divine law, and in this sense an offense to God, but on the contrary only because it is a violence against against the other, against another man. So it is a violation of the human subjective rights and not a violation of the natural law. But this is the doctrine of the modern liberal rights, but it is not the teaching of the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm. Almost an ecclesiastical libertarianism, just to let go. So,
exactly.
As an historian, then, we would like to see the Vatican address the issue of homosexuality in the priesthood. But would you say that this problem, even if they did address homosexuality, we are not saying that would solve the crisis. I mean, this is almost like the end of a long period of time where the church has been under assault in the homosexuality in the priesthood. Would you say that's more of a consequence of the entire revolution that's been going on for a long time? So we're fighting for more than just that, but at the moment we have to address this issue of homosexuality.
Yes, of course. Pedophily is only a little part of a largest problem, which is homosexuality. But the diffusion of homosexuality is more a consequence than, more a symptom than rather than a cause. And if we want to see the real causes of this decadence, we have to remember that until the 60s there was, under the pontificate of Pius XII, the Church was based on a divine and natural moral law. But with the Second Vatican Council and with the post-conciliar era, a new moral, a new philosophy, a new vision of the world began, and the idea it was to abandon the traditional rules, the traditional objective laws, to change the relationship with the world. Mm-hmm. Since this moment is no more the Church which judges the world, but the world which judges the Church. I mean that the criteria of judgment is not the divine law, but it is the world's law, mm-hmm. which is unfortunately opposed to the law of the gospel.
Mm-hmm. You've written a very a very popular, well-known book on the Second Vatican Council. And I wonder if you could say something to our viewers about where Francis comes in, Pope Francis, because in the United States there's this idea that Pope Francis is an anomaly. He came about and he is the main problem. Mm-hmm. But for someone like you, an historian and someone who's studied Vatican II, I would imagine that you would say Pope Francis is a consequence of Vatican II. He's not the revolutionary himself. Is this accurate?
Pope Francis has a father and a grandfather. The father of him is Cardinal Martini, and the grandfather is Karl Rahner. The three men were Jesuit. Karl Rahner was the great inspirator of the Second Vatican Council. Cardinal Martini was the Cardinal Archbishop of Milan, and he was the organizer of the conclave of the 2005, when Cardinal Bergoglio was chosen by the what today we call the San Gallen Mafia, as a candidate opposed to Cardinal Ratzinger. Cardinal Ratzinger won, Cardinal Martini died, and now Pope Francis is the third step, the third thesis of this process. Rahner, Martini, Francis, a process which comes directly from the Second Vatican Council, in my view, and so Pope Francis is the last product, the last fruit of the Vatican II.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that in terms of, I'm going to ask you about the theological motivations behind the style of demonstration that you put on this week in Rome, but before we get to that, what part do you believe that the traditional, the liturgy plays, traditional Latin Mass versus the new Mass? Do you think that if there was a restoration of the traditional Latin Mass more wide throughout the Church, would this be a good defense against what's happening in Rome, against the doctrine in the Church, in the world?
Yes, of course. The restoration of the Tridentine liturgy will be an important, decisive step for a more general restoration. And we have to remember that this year, I think that the 25th of April, it is the 50th anniversary of the Novus Ordo of Paul VI. And from this point of view, I think that we can say that the revolutionary role of Paul VI was not minor, but perhaps worse, that the role of Pope Francis, because Paul VI is the man of the new liturgy, of the Novus Ordo, of the Ostpolitik, and of the Second Vatican Council. So I think that there was in these years, the 60s and the 70s, a real fracture inside the Church, not minor that the current crisis. But we have to remember too that when the Second Vatican Council began, all the conciliar fathers celebrated the ancient Mass. So the Tridentine Mass couldn't oppose a real barrier to the theological and philosophical revolution. So I think that the good liturgy is necessary, but it is not enough. Okay. I mean that we have to oppose to the revolution a really complete liturgical, philosophical, theological, social opposition.
Okay. I said I only had one more question, but I want to make it two because I'm curious. I could talk to you all day about these issues, but again, as an historian, when we look at the revolution in the Catholic Church, you mentioned a few moments ago the French Revolution of 1789. In a way, are we talking about the same revolution? In the Vatican, they keep using words like fraternity and liberty and all these things and freedom, and it almost has a Freemasonic or a French Revolution tone. Yes. Is it the same?
I think that it is the same. I mean that we live always in the French revolutionary era. It is after 200 years. We have to finish with the French Revolution. It is not yet finished.
Interesting. And do you think that Pope Francis has gone a little too far? Or is he giving away too many secrets? Because it seems like a lot of people now are turning against him. Is he?
Yes, I agree with you. I think that in reality we live in a post-Franciscan era. Because I think that his pontificate is concluded. I don't say this from a chronological point of view. I mean that I don't know if in 1 month or 1 year or more he will pope or not. But I think that from a logical point of view, there is no future in his action. We are living the decline, but a very rapid, very fast decline of his pontificate.
Last question. I was moved. I was so moved to be a part of your demonstration in Rome 3 days ago. And I noticed a couple of things. You didn't seem to advertise that demonstration very much. And you put a great emphasis on silence and an emphasis on the rosary. And I think that contributed to the powerful impact that it wasn't just a big crowd. It was people representing perhaps the solution, the theological, the devotional solution to this crisis, which is Our Lady, which is the Rosary, and to some extent, silent witness to the truth. Can you just say something about that?
Above all, I thank you very much for your presence in Rome. I am honored to have you close near to me in this manifestation. You and many other American and foreign people. So it was really an international event. And also there were many people from different parts of Italy, and among these people there were men, women, cultivated scholars, but also very simple people. I mean, it was really a microcosm of the Catholic world, where it was a silent manifestation. I think that there are different kinds of silence. There is a kind of silence coming from arrogance. It is an ideological silence. People that doesn't want to speak with you from an ideological, arrogant point of view. There is the silence of the cowards, of people who don't dare speak because they are afraid to be punished or persecuted. It is a second kind. And then there is a third kind of silence, our silence, which in reality is not a silence, because you can speak in in many there are many kinds of speaking. Speaking is not only move your lips. You can speak also with a presence, with a jest, with an act. This is not only for good things, but also for bad things. For example, you can have the silent image of Pope Francis embracing an imam in Abu Dhabi. It is a silent. It is only a picture, but it speaks more than a talk, than a speech. And so our manifestation was a public manifestation in a public square, with our faces, with our persons. And so I think that in our initiative there was something new, and I am very happy that we have success, because perhaps it is the indication for a future path, a road that we can have in the future against the auto-demolition of the church, to resist publicly, not always in silence, but surely always praying, because the prayer is the fundament, is the basis for our action.
In Our Lady, you dedicated it to Our Lady as well.
And the name we have chosen, Aces Ordinata, which means an army ordered for the battle. It is a very fine image, because it is Our Lady who fights and wins all the heresies, all the enemies of the church. We are simple soldiers, sons of the militant church at the service of Our Lady, fighting for her reign, which is the reign of our Lord, and it is the triumph of the church that in Fatima Our Lady herself has promised us.
Professor de Mattei, it is an honor to stand on the battlefield with you. Continue to lead us.
With your help.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you.